Good morning. This morning I want to update you on two ongoing County Cares initiatives to address both the public health and the humanitarian aspect of COVID in our community. First, I'm pleased to announce that Affinia Healthcare has joined People's Health Centers and CARE STL as our third federally qualified health center to help us provide services in underserved areas in St. Louis County during the COVID-19 pandemic. St. Louis County has awarded Affinia Healthcare $940,000 to provide COVID-19 testing to underserved areas. 90% of Affinia's patients are 100% below the federal poverty level, and 81% of Affinia's patients are minority. The grant will allow Affinia to test 20,000 patients in St. Louis County free of charge. Even before this grant was awarded, Affinia had tested 12,000 patients in pop-up testing centers and hotspots throughout the St. Louis region. In addition to Affinia, the county has given $578,000 to People's Health Centers and $1.5 million to CARE STL. And these health centers will provide thousands of tests to St. Louis County residents, again, free of charge. These funds are available through grants provided by the Federal CARES Act program. Secondly, I'd like to provide an update on the county's efforts to address the digital divide through the county library's digital equity program. Last Friday, the county library announced that the services of Tutor.com were live and available to students who are returning to school this fall, this week, today, in a virtual classroom setting. Tutor.com will provide online tutoring services from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. And Tutor.com services cover more than 100 subjects and prep areas with hundreds of videos available for math, language, and other AP classes. Students can also take advantage of free ACT and SAT tests and test prep questions, and also drop-off services for writing assignments. The web service also offers job search help with resume support, job searches, and interview prep. And access to Tutor.com is available to all St. Louis County library card holders through the Connect Ed library card system, and schools and school districts who have not yet taken advantage of this program can apply virtually for Connect Ed library cards for their students. And I would be happy to take any questions.
County Executive Page, today's the first, correct me if I'm wrong, today's the first day that the mask ordinance or the mask mandate expands. Can you just kind of explain again like what the changes are that start today?
Yeah, so all K through 12 students in an education setting will be required to wear masks with some exceptions, and those exceptions are outlined through our public health orders on the stlcorona.com website. We're also asking kids over 5 to wear masks in a public setting. In addition, previously our public health order was for kids who are 9 or older. And of course we're asking businesses to require masks in order for people to come into their place of business. And in the past we had not asked the businesses to actively and proactively support this public health order, but we know that we still have a gap in some places of our community, in some places of the county, and we're following the lead of other areas of our country who have been successful in limiting the spread of COVID.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, one of the exceptions is children with sensory disorders or developmental disorders, right? So, and I don't mean to overly personalize this, but since I do have a child with a developmental disorder, my wife would actually be very interested in this answer. Do I have to bring papers to the Magic House in order for my son not to wear a mask? Like papers showing he has a developmental disability?
No, I think that, no, I appreciate that frustration. I mean, COVID touches our lives in ways that we never expected, and it certainly takes some getting used to make an adjustment for what we have to do in our community to limit the spread of the virus. But everything we've done to this point and we will continue to do will be to depend on common sense and reasonableness of everyone who is affected by this. And if someone has some sort of mental health condition or some sort of medical condition that doesn't make it, it doesn't benefit them to wear a mask, doesn't fit the cost-benefit analysis, it's not in their best interest to wear a mask. We understand that, and that's been our position from the beginning. We're not asking people to show documentation. We're just asking them to tell us, and we will accept their word. And I think most people in St. Louis County will continue, as they have to date, to be reasonable and help us through this very difficult time.
Can you explain what was the reasoning behind shifting both things? Obviously, I just mentioned a question on the kids part, but it also expanded to allowing, basically saying businesses have to refuse people with masks. What was your line of thinking on that?
Well, we have to get compliance up, and actually a lot of that was based on feedback from complaints. And you know, we have had over 100 or so complaints of businesses not following our mask guidelines with not necessarily through, in fact, we see wide compliance with employees, for the most part, employees wearing masks. But there's a lot of concern in our community that there are still some places where folks go in and out without wearing a mask. Now, a lot of what we've seen since our masking order 4 weeks ago is most national franchises, most businesses that have a national footprint have, on the national level, required the enforcement of mask mandates for people to come in their stores. Everybody from Walmart to our grocery stores to a lot of other retail businesses. So there were a few gaps left in our community for businesses that did not have a national footprint, and we felt it was time to close those gaps and close those loopholes, get more people wearing masks, and it will allow us to ease our other social distance, mixing restrictions, and get back to more of a normal life in our community.
Am I the only reporter here? Okay. Shifting gears, since your last press availability, the state audit was leaked to the Post-Dispatch, and I understand that, like, the state auditor's not supposed to talk about an audit before it's officially released, but it's out in the open.
Right.
Do you have any general reaction to what you've seen with your?
No, I asked the auditor to come and review us, and the county council asked the auditor to come and audit county government, and we'll be reviewing those recommendations and responding to them like the typical process in an audit. I'm grateful for that review, and I'm grateful for those recommendations, and we will look at them, and we will provide our response, and we will adjust the way we operate in county government wherever it's necessary.
So Councilman Ernie Tracus sent a letter this weekend basically saying that State Auditor Galloway had a conflict of interest because her uncle worked on both Stanger and Montavani's campaign. But as you mentioned, you're the one who called for this audit right after you were sworn in. Do you not really share any of those concerns? I'm
really not focused on the politics or what might be going on in the background. You know, politics is everywhere. What I want to know is what are their recommendations for us in county government. I would like for my staff and administration to look at those recommendations and provide a response to those recommendations and adopt the ones that we think are good ideas.
So I talked with Hazel Irby on Thursday or Friday, and I understand that you said your piece on Wednesday, but I do want to ask this question. She mentioned to me that either you or your campaign wanted her to make a statement decrying an ad about how she should have been county executive instead of you, and she refused to do it, and that might have engendered some ill will between you two. Is that accurate?
You know, I've talked to Hazel a couple of times since the election, and I'm really not going to get into, you know, accusations and any wild claims, but I would say that you know, my philosophy and my perspective on how we needed to move forward with minority participation was different than hers, and that difference really was the driving factor in my decision to put someone else in charge of that department. I think that the person that we have there now, Kenny Murdoch, is extraordinarily well qualified to provide diversity and equity and inclusion training within county government, and we will begin a national search to put a separate person in charge of minority participation, and we'll build that program to be identical to the ordinance. But I really don't want to, you know, go into any more detail or back and forth about why we're making a change. Everyone will make their own judgment. Everyone has their opinion about, you know, who should be in charge of what, but we're going to make a lot of changes. We made 5 or 6 new appointments last week. We'll be making more in the coming weeks, and we'll be putting new people in new positions in county government.
My last question for you, it's a broader question. You know, if you look at the election results, you look at the townships that are primarily black, you didn't win a lot of those townships. And my question for you is, do you have some work to do to convince black voters and black people in St. Louis County that your administration is working for them?
Well, I think there are always, you know, one of the reasons why St. Louis County is struggling as a region to grow economically is that we have neighborhoods, many of them black, many of them subject to historic, decades-long racial and economic segregation, going back to redlining and a loss of opportunity. And what we've done in my administration from the very beginning is to look at every complex problem through a lens of equity, and I'm proud of that work. Our COVID-19 response has been to direct the resources where they're needed the most, and predominantly the 18 zip codes, 17 of them in North County, have received the support. But you know, there's a lot of work to do in race relations in our community, and I've been out front of that and will continue to do so. And if you look at the election results, I won North County, you know, I won South County, close margins, won the Central Corridor by a larger margin, and won West County. And I will continue to focus my administration on these questions of race relations. And I think we've all got a lot of work to do to address these, not just my administration, but our whole community. We have to address these questions of equity and inclusion across our community. We have to get resources to where they're needed the most.
Actually, I do have one more question. So Councilwoman Lisa Clancy announced maybe about 10-15 minutes ago that she was going to be dropping Bill 188, which is the early childhood education tax. I know that that would have been a countywide issue, but you still would have had to sign off on whether there should have been an election or not. Where do you kind of see the future of that issue going?
Well, I think
going back to the drawing board.
I think that Councilwoman Clancy has identified a very important issue that we have to address as a community. We live in a state where public education is historically underfunded, one of the worst in the country, and that's a problem for us, and that leaves us behind in support for public education, and it leaves us behind in support for early childhood. And she's identified a problem that we have in our community and we have in our state that has to be addressed. We have to find some sort of way to fund early childhood education in our community. Whether or not this was the right mechanism, I guess that'll be a question for a future conversation. But she's identified a topic that needs a great deal of attention from our regional leaders, from our local leaders, and from our state. Okay, great. Thank you.